theyeshiva.net.
We're going to start a new Maamar today. Please turn to page 31 in Likkutei Torah. No, it's going to say on the top Tzav. Tez Zayin, column 2, Hayam Raah Vayanos Chuli. On top it says Tzav, Daf Tez Zayin Amud Beis, column 2, Hayam Raah Vayanos. You see, Parshas Tzav, Daf Tez Zayin, column 2, page 31. Make sure you're in Parshas Tzav, because the number Tez Zayin, it repeats itself a few times. This Maamar was said by the Baal HaTanya, by the Alter Rebbe, in the year Tov Kuf Ayin Aleph, which would be Pesach 1811, and it begins with the Psukim of Hallel, that of course we recite on the 8 days of Pesach, and of course also during the Seder, when we say Hallel, in the middle of the Seder. It's from the second paragraph, the second chapter of Hallel, B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, where David HaMelech says, B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim Beis Yaakov Ma'am Loyes, Hosi Yehuda L'Kotche Yisrael Ma'am Shaloisav, Hayam Raah Vayanos, Hayarden Yisav La'acher, Haharim Noktu Che'elim, Gevoyes Kivinei Tzoin. Literally, Hayam Raah, the sea saw and it fled. The sea saw, Hayam Raah, and it fled. Hayam Raah Vayanos, Hayarden Yisav La'acher, the Jordan moved backward. Haharim, the mountains, Roktu Che'elim, they danced, they leaped like rams. Like Elim, Baranen, rams. Gvoyes Kivnei Tzoin, mounds danced and leaped like Bnei Tzoin, like young sheep. So the pasuk continues, Malacha Hayam Kisanus Hayarden Tisav La'acher. What are you running away, my dear Yam? Where are you going, Jordan? Malacha Hayam. Haharim Roktu Che'elim, Gvoyes Kivnei Tzoin. Why are you leaping like rams, mountains, and mounds like young sheep? And they answer, Milifnei Adain Chuli Aretz, Milifnei Alekai Yaakov. In the presence of the master who shakes up the earth, in the presence of the master of Yaakov, he transforms the rock into water, the chalamish, the flintstone, into a wellspring. That's the end of the chapter. B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim. V'hinei tzarich lahavin lama haharim raktu v'ayam raah vayanos. At first glance, it's a lot of interesting melitzas here, poetic expressions. But we have to understand a little deeper, what's the havana of these words? When it comes to the mountains, he says the mountains danced. When it comes to the sea, the yam, he says the yam saw and it fled. Vayanos, it ran away. What's the diuk? That the mountains were dancing and the waters of the sea fled. They escaped. They ran away. The Shalah, Rabbeinu Yeshaya Horowitz, who wrote a sefer called Shalah Shnei Luchas Abris, and he has a section called Masechta Psachim. Masechta Psachim is not a commentary on Psachim. The Shalah sefer, he has a section called Masechta Psachim, which is the section of Shalah that deals with Pesach. It's called his own Masechta Psachim. Shalah, in his Masechta Psachim Pirush, he asks this question, and he explains as follows: Nisa hu avoda me'yira, Rikud is avoda me'ava. Nisa, running, and tloifen, vayanos, to run away, represents serving Hashem with awe, with reverence. Rikud, dancing, represents serving with love. And we understand the difference. When somebody runs, you run out of fear, out of awe. You want to run away. You don't want to be here. Dancing, you're not running away. On the contrary, dancing is an expression of joy, of simcha. Ketzad meraktin lifnei hakala. So the Shalah says there's two types of avodas Hashem. There's the avodah of yireh, where there's nisa, you run, and there's the avodah of ava, of love, where there's rikida, where there's dancing. And the Shalah says, v'ubchinas sar ubchinas evet. This is the difference between the sar and the evet. The king has two types of people working with him, for him. One is a sar would be the minister, and the eved would be the servant. The sar feels a closeness to the king. Chavelap, we're colleagues, we're friends, there's a camaraderie. And there is loyalty that comes from love, from affection. We understand each other, we relate to each other, we connect to each other. The eved doesn't feel that he's a friend of the king, he's a colleague of the king. The eved feels like a servant of the king. He's surrendered to the king, he's loyal, he's dedicated to the king. He has a sense of roimamos, yiras haroimamos, an awe of aloofness, the awe of sublimity in the presence of the king. That's the sar, represents a close relationship. We're like friends. We talk about things. These are the king's close entourage, his colleagues. And then you have the eved. The eved is the servant. His avodah, his relationship is one of yira, of awe, of reverence. It's a different type of relationship. V'hinei, Shalom explains, Bizgalos HaMelech. What's the difference? When the king is revealed, Azai B'chinas Sar, Shavaydase B'simcha Tigdal Simchase. The Sar, the minister, that is avodah usually is with simcha, with a sense of satisfaction and joy. His joy will only will only grow. When the king is revealed, when there's a graciousness that's exposed, that's manifested, he feels so much closer, and therefore the simcha grows. V'zeu haharim, and that's pshat haharim raktu che'elim. That during Yetzias Mitzrayim, the mountains started to dance. The mountains, which represents the sar, which is avodah me'ava. So now, when the melech is revealed, the feeling of closeness is so much more. It's like the melech demonstrates an even deeper closeness, so the sar starts dancing. So he says, V'zeu haharim, these are the mountains, sheheim midos da atzilus, as he will soon explain in the Maamar, which represent the midos of the world which we call the world of atzilus. Shemisham shayresh hanashamas hanikrayim achim lamakim, and that's the source of the souls who are called achim lamakim, brothers of Hashem. Laman achai v'reyai adaber nashalom bach, for my brothers and friends. There's the neshamas that are called brothers lamakim, kesar lefnei hamelech. These souls are like the minister in front of the king v'lachein raktu. So the mountains started to dance by Yetzias Mitzrayim. Ubchinas eved, what about the eved? Shavaydase b'yira, his avodah is with awe. Azai b'izgalus hamelech, tipul la'im of ha'pachad b'yoser. Now when the melech is revealed, on the contrary, the awe and the dread and the fear is increased. V'zeu hayam, shemisham shoyrish b'chinas ke'eved l'fnei hamelech Raah Vayanos. The yam, which represents those souls that are not achim lamakim, they're not brothers, they're avodim, they're servants. What does the yam do when there's a gilui of the melech? The yam runs away. So it depends what your MO is. Is your avodah out of ava, your avodah out of yira? The one whose relationship with the king is one of a sense of closeness. When the king reveals himself, the closeness is so much more. There's so much more grace, there's so much more a feeling of simcha, of satisfaction. He starts dancing. The mountain on a good day is a mountain, but now haharim rakdu che'elim, he's jumping and dancing from simcha. Then you have the one whose avodah is primarily one of yira. There's a sense of awe, of reverence. Now when the melech reveals himself, there's so much more. Now he runs away much more. The melech comes out, he runs. Hayam Raah Vayanos, that's the yam. Two types of neshamas. There's neshamas that are called brothers, and neshamas that are called avodim. There's neshamas that are b'chinas of yira, neshamas of ava, that's harim and yam. So the Shalah says, here it says raktu, and here it says yanos. Two separate avodas Hashem. That's a summation of the message of the Shalah in his commentary in Pesach. And here the Tzemach Tzedek has a parenthesis, kedarke b'kodesh, he has all the references wherever you have in Kabbalah, the discussion, or in Medrash, the discussion of these two b'chinas of the Sar and the Eved, v'ayin mashakosov, he goes through Maamarim and sources. A few lines later, you have the Maamar continues, Lahavin Zevetois V'Sbir. Lahavin Zevetois V'Sbir, to understand this with more explanation, what does this mean? Hine, mitchila yesh lahaktem inyan shvi shel Pesach shabai nikra hayam. For this, we have to explain the concept of shvi shel Pesach, when actually the yam split. When was the Hayam Raah Vayanos? The sea saw and it fled. It's referring to the splitting of the sea. The splitting of the sea, the waters, so to speak, fled in the sense that they separated, they parted ways, and they congealed like walls, so the Jews could pass through. That happened on the seventh day of Pesach. Before B'Priyetz Chayim, The Arizal in Pri Etz Chaim explains, Shehu gamkin inyan leidas hanashamas. Kriyas Yamsuf is not only the splitting of the sea. Kriyas Yamsuf represents a certain reality, and that is, it's the splitting of the cosmic womb that holds the souls pregnant, and Shvi Shal Pesach is the time that all souls are born. They emerge. Just like literally Kriyas Yamsuf means the sea split, and what was inside emerged, and they could walk in dry land. As we're going to see, the Yam also represents the womb that contains souls in it, and Kriyas Yamsuf is like the splitting of the cosmic womb of the mother, and the neshamas come out, the neshamas emerge. So Pri Etz Chaim says, the time of the year that souls are born, neshamas are born, all neshamas, their leida is Shvi Shal Pesach. That's pshat. The Jewish people walked in dry land b'soich hayam. It means literally and metaphysically. And Torah Hanistur, the Arizal says in Pri Etz Chaim, it means leidas hanashamas. The neshamas emerge from b'soich hayam into yabosh. What does this mean? The explanation in all of this is ki neshamas Yisrael olu b'machshava. The Medrash Rabbi says in the beginning of Bereshis, Yisrael olu b'machshava, meaning literally the Jewish people ascended in thought. So he says here, Neshamas Yisrael ascended in whose machshava? Hashem's machshava. V'oz nekroyim achim v'reim lakadosh baruch Hu. In that space, all souls are called brothers and friends of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Pirush achim v'reim hu. What's pshat? What is the meaning, brothers and friends? Liyois ki kutshe brichu hu b'chinis oirein seif baruch hu k'shemalubish b'midas da'atzilas. When you see the term kutshe brichu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's referring to the oir, the light, the energy of the infinite one, blessed be He. When it's enclosed, when the light is enclosed in midos of Atzilus, in the attributes of the world of Atzilus, He's called Kutsha Brichu. Ki ein soif baruch hu ba'atzmai lav mikol inun midos iyu klal. The Ein Sof, the infinite one, blessed be He, on His own, in His essence, the Zohar says, does not consist of any midos. He's not comprised. He's not made up of midos, of characteristics, of attributes, of emotions. Midos, of course, comes from the word midah, which means a measurement. Why? Because as hard as it is to think this way, emotions can be measured. Characteristics can be measured. Maybe not with a measuring stick, that's not going to work, but they can be measured in the sense they have a definition, they have a description. Huh? The intensity could be measured, yes. Its evolution could be measured. Its expression could be measured.
They have the MRI imaging now. They look at the parts of the
Exactly,
brain,
yeah.
which is
Yeah.
what they're doing.
In MRI imaging, they look at the parts of the brain responsible, the regions of the brain responsible for various emotions. So this is an element of midah. Even if it's, in our mind, it will be an explosive emotion, a very powerful emotion, but it's still called a midah. There's a measurement. V'lo yitachin ala atzmus kriyas shem klal. On atzmus, on the essence of Hashem, there's no name. We can't call it any name. That's why we say lav mikol inun midas klal. Elarak al b'chinas is galusay. Only on the way He reveals Himself. Over there, you can give different names. Va'az nikra Havaya. Then He has the first name. The first name is Yudkei Vavkei, called Shem Havaya. Instead of saying Yudkei Vavkei, He says Shem Havaya. What's Havaya? Yud represents Chachma. Hey represents Bina. But the fact that we could say Shemos, names, is already not the essence. This is the His galus. It's His revelation. And revelation is the way you're revealed to others. Others may not yet mean others, the worlds, but others means you are defining yourself in a way that you could be experienced, you could be articulated. That itself, the Hisgalus itself, could come in infinite gradations. But over there you could start talking about a name, including the name of Yudkei Vavkei. V'hine, Samach Riboy Neshamas Yisrael, the 600,000 Jewish souls, Samach Reish is Samach Riboy. Riboy is 10,000, myriad. Samach Riboy is 60 times 10,000. which of course is 600,000 Jewish souls. They come from 600,000 letters of thought. He said, Neshamas Yisrael Ola b'machshava. Each neshama is a thought. We think in letters. All of us think in letters. We don't realize, but there's a language in which you think in. Just like when you speak in a language. You speak English, you speak Yiddish, you speak Hebrew, you speak Russian, you speak French. When you think, you also think in a language. There's no thinking without a language. Right? People don't realize, but if you think about your thoughts, you'll see you're always thinking in a language. So machshava is already associated with oisius, with letters. Just like I can't speak without letters, I need A, B, C, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. I can't think without letters. The letters are less tangible, but they're letters nonetheless. Oisius machshava. So there are 600,000 letters of thought from which each neshama comes from, because it's Olu b'machshava. Each neshama is, so to speak, a letter. Nikrayim, these souls are called Achim Likkutei Torah. They're brothers of Likkutei Torah. Why? What did we say is Likkutei Torah? You remember? Not Atzmos. Likkutei Torah is already a name. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the way Ein Sof is enclosed in the Midos of Atzilus. It's the Hisgalos of it. So therefore the neshamas, which are rooted in Oisius HaMachshava, are called Achim, brothers of Hashem, Likkutei Torah, Shehem HaMidos. K'moy al derech mashal u'machshavas seichel. Take an example of machshavas seichel. What's machshavas seichel? Thinking about an idea. Sheha'oisius heim ke'etzem echad imuhus ha'seichel shebeseichel. The letters are like, they're not one, but they're like etzem echad. They're like one essence with the essence of seichel in the thought. V'chei machshavas hamidos im hamidos. The same is true. The thoughts of emotions with emotions, to the point that most people don't even know how to distinguish between the two. How do you distinguish between the idea and the thoughts of the idea? How to distinguish between the emotion and the thoughts of the emotion? They come packaged together, but it's still a package. It's called Achim, brothers. It's very hard for us to distinguish between the seichel itself and the thoughts of the seichel. Because how do I experience seichel without machshava? Huh?
No, you see this damage in the brain sometimes where the intelligence is not impaired, but the ability to form the words and to understand the words.
Right, and sometimes machshava also.
Machshava,
But it's harder to...
sometimes machshava is there, but
Yeah.
expression is not.
You hear what he's saying? Sometimes there's a damage in the brain. What's damaged? Not the ability to formulate ideas or to understand ideas, but the ability to formulate ideas within letters, within words. Because we cannot experience an idea without thought, without machshava. Just like you can't experience my ideas if I don't talk. If I'm thinking them inside, you don't know. You can't experience my emotions without conversation. I mean, you can experience, I guess, facial features and certain gestures and body language. But generally speaking, to understand what somebody else is going through, they have to talk. They have to express themselves. What you need to understand what you're going through is you have to think. So, but thought about seichel is not seichel. Seichel is the idea itself. Midas is the emotion itself. And then there's how I process it through letters and through words. I'm explaining the idea to myself, and then I'm explaining the idea to somebody else. The difference, of course, is when you're explaining it to somebody else, you need lots and lots of words. And sometimes you know what you think in 2 seconds. If you have to say it, how long does it take? It could take 2 hours. Right? We know you have a daydream, you have a thought. In 5 seconds, talk about it, you could talk for half an hour, you could talk about 45 minutes. The oisius are very, very subtle, are very, very compressed in the sense that they have a lot of them inside, but it's still oisius. It's similar to dibur. So he says that the oisius are like one etzem with the muhus haseichel. They're not the same, but they're like one core with the muhus haseichel. And the machshavas hamidus im hamidus. And it's important to be able also to distinguish between the two. Your thoughts of emotions are not the emotion, and your thoughts of the seichel are not the seichel. Even though they're so closely connected, and that's our only access to them. I cannot access an idea without thinking about the idea. And I cannot access my emotion to myself without thinking about my emotion. In other words, call midos or seichel like a picture, like literally a photograph, and then you take it and you analyze it through oisius. But the photograph is not yet the oisius. The image is not yet the oisius. There's a book about children who have special needs, seeing in pictures, right? The whole world is pictures, basically. Seeing in pictures. Many of us, are blessed with the skill that we could talk about the picture. We could explain the picture to ourselves. We could talk about the picture. We can explain to others the picture. For others, there's only a picture. That's what it is. And when the picture is not enclosed in letters, it's a much more powerful picture, because it's not diluted or compromised through oisius. So therefore, oisius machshava with seichel and midas, it's not the same thing, but it's like an etzem, because they're so integrated, they're so deeply connected. V'oz heim b'chinas elakus mamash. In that state, the soul, which is Allah b'machshava, is mamash godliness. So kutsha brichu represents the midas. What's the neshama? The neshama represents the oisius hamachshava of the midas. So they're called achim lamakim. The neshama is called achim l'kutsha brichu because your thoughts and your midas are brothers. They're so deeply connected, they're like etzem echad. They're not the same, they're brothers. They work together. Over in that space, the neshama is hamamash alakus. Ki ba'atzilus, in Atzilus it says in Zoyar, ihu, he, v'chayohi, his lights, his oiris, v'garmoi and his kalim, chad, are one. So therefore, he and his lights, which represents the midos, kutchabrichu, yud kevavke, and the garmoi are the kalim, which represents the oisius, the machshava, that's the kalim, through which you express the seichel and the midas, are considered chad. In that state, the neshamas are alakus mamash. So what's the definition of a soul in this Maamar? What's the Balatanya's definition here of a neshama? What is a soul? Okay, but a little more specifically, it's basically, it's a little hard to grasp, but it's basically what he's saying is, it's God in communication with himself. The soul is basically, it's God communicating to himself. It's the oisius hamachshava that are one with the midas. So you have three inyanim. You have what he says, that which is beyond kutshabrichu, atzmos. Lav mikol inayin midas iu klal. There's no name, there's no description, there's no midah. There's not shaykh even to say a name for it. That's his essence. Where do we start talking about names, or even HaKadosh Baruch Hu? It's only his galusai, the way he was revealed. What does it mean, the way he is revealed? The way he allows the Ein Sof to be articulated in a particular fashion that it could be relatable. That's called his galus. Whenever you talk about anything in the world, there's the etzem of it and the his galus of it. The etzem of it is what it is vis-a-vis itself. The his galus of it is what it is vis-a-vis somebody else who sees it. That's called his galus. It's revelation. By definition, that which is revealed is already not the essence. That which is revealed is that which is relatable to the one who's going to experience it. And I can't experience the essence for what it is because I experience you based on me, not based on you. How do I experience you? I experience you through my tools. So therefore, I process you through me. So therefore, your hisgalos, by definition, is more about me than it's about you. In relationships, this is key. Whenever we speak about relationships, we don't speak about the etzem. We only speak about hisgalos. It's how I experience you, which is one of the great sources of contention in a relationship. I mean, this is how I would make it very practical. You see this constantly when it comes, for example, to shalom bayis issues. I didn't want to go there, but I don't have a better metaphor, so I'm going to go there. Somehow husbands and wives just bring out the best of all mashalom when you want to talk about relationship challenges, right? God's sense of humor. He could have kept the bachim in a yeshiva dormitory and the girls in a girls' dormitory, and everybody would live happily ever after, and the therapist would be out of business. He decided, Abba ve'ima, Adam and Chava have to work together and figure it out. Okay? That's part of the drama of creation. So now let's think about it. Constantly, when there's the communication, very, very deep down, what the husband experiences of his wife may be completely different than what she is actually feeling, what she is actually experiencing. And conversely, what she's experiencing of him may be completely different than who he really is and what he's really feeling. And it's not a question only of communication, that too, but it's a real question of experience. Because basically what I know of you is only limited what I know of myself. I can't get you not through me. I can't get you. How do I get you? It's I get you. So I'm coming with me. Everybody comes with their own presence. That's how we experience the world. So by definition, all of our experiences are filtered through the filter of our psyche, our brain, our personality, our soul, and naturally our experiences. And therefore, if it doesn't fit into that, I will make it fit in. Or I'll push it away, or I have to run. Or I make it fit, or I distort it a little bit. But it's only what I process. And humility is the beginning of the process where actually you could distinguish between the atzmos and the hisgalus. But now understand, this is not only if there's a distortion, even in a deeper level where there's no distortion, the hisgalus is already not the atzmos. Hisgalus is what allows ultimately for a distortion. Because what is hisgalus? Hisgalus basically means that there is the essence in terms of essence, and then there is that the essence chooses to allow itself to be experienced by something outside of it. But for this, the atzmos has to become melubash. What do we mean melubash? Melubash means it allows itself to be defined through different mediums, through different experiences. What does it mean in terms of Hashem? In terms of Hashem is, a person relates to Hashem in terms of some energy that speaks to him. That's how he relates to him. That's not the atzmos, that's the hisgalus. Where does this hisgalus begin? In the world of Atzilus. The world of Atzilus is already a world of structure. There's Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvur. That's where he's called HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's where there's Yud, and there's Hey, and there's Vav, and there's Hey. What is a neshama? A neshama is like the letters of thought that allow you to experience your hisgalus. They allow you to experience your seichel. They allow you to experience your midas. They're still inside of you. What would a person be like if there was no skill of thought? What would happen? The seichel and the midas would be there. The raw emotion would be there, and the raw idea would be there. But I wouldn't be able to become aware of it, because I wouldn't have the tools to be able to process it, because I wouldn't have the oisis HaMachshava. So now, when we speak about Neshamas Yisrael Olav Machshava, they're called Achem Lamakim. What are they? They're brothers to Hashem. What does he say they're brothers? Because the Oisis HaMachshava's relationship with the Midas and the Seichel is Ke'etzem Echad. They come together, they're packaged together, they're completely united. Like Machshava Seichel, where the Oisis are like one Etzem with the Seichel, or Machshavas HaMidas with the Midas. So what is the Neshama then? The Neshama is basically absolute, pure, divine energy. The way the divine communicates to the divine. It's the Oisius that capture the Seichel and the Midas. That's a Neshama. So what is a neshama? A neshama is like God speaking to himself, so to speak. That's the soul. We look at a soul and we're saying, I have a soul, you have a soul. So you have to. So what is your I on its deepest level? What is your I on its deepest level? If you take your I, your neshama, and you trace it back to its core, the way it is achem lamakim, what is it? It's basically, he says, elikus mamish. It's divine. And specifically, what is it? It's the oisius hamachshava, neshamas Yisrael, all of machshava that are completely one with the seichel and the midas, and it's indistinguishable. A neshama l'cha'ira ultimately is going to become the source of life that's going to go into the person, but in its source, what is a neshama? A neshama is the oisius that facilitate the gilui of seichel and midas of elikus and olam atzilus. That's the definition of a neshama here. For the neshama to assume an identity called yesh, meaning it becomes something. Li is b'chinas nivra. The neshama ultimately becomes a nivra. It becomes something that we call created. Ata barasa l'kai neshama shenasata bi tahorehi. Ata barasa. The neshama assumes nivra. It's nifred. It's something separate. It's not God. Shubchinis nifred, me'ayin mamish. The neshama becomes a yesh, where it becomes nifred, it becomes separated. Me'ayin mamish. This is called yesh me ayin. What do we mean ayin? Ayin doesn't mean it didn't exist. Ayin means you can't compare its state of existence in the state of ayin to its state of existence in the state of yesh. It's like from nothing. Because when the neshama is in a state of atzilus, it's mamash divine. Really, even when we say the neshamas are letters of thought, it's only to satisfy the ear. It's only because in a mashal, that's the closest we can get. So we say the neshama is oisis hamachshava. Even that mashal is inaccurate, as the pasuk says in Yeshaya, my thoughts are not your thoughts, which he's explaining here to mean that even the mashal of oisis hamachshava, don't think it's like your machshava. It's even a deeper dveikus. It's even a deeper relationship. What allows the neshama now to go through this metamorphosis and from absolute divine energy, inseparable from Hashem himself, from his midas, to become something separate, to become a nivra? He says, Hu al yidei midas malchusa yizbarach. This happens through the attribute of his malchus. Shehi hanikra levush. Malchus is called a cloak, a garment, lahaylim ulahastir, to conceal and block, at sheyuchal liyas b'chinas yesh, until the neshama can assume an identity which we call a yesh, a being, a faranenkeit in Yiddish. It's faran, it is. In its source, you don't say it is. It's a state of ayin, meaning it's a lakus, it's part of the divine. Ukamay shekasov, the pasuk says, Ki Hashem malach geus lavish. We say it in the Shir Shal Yom of Friday from Tehillim. Hashem malach, Hashem is a king. Geus lavish. He clothes himself in geus. What's geus?
Majesty.
In majesty. Why does it mean he clothes himself in majesty? Ki midas hamalucha hi halavush. Geus is a lavush. Malucha is a lavush. Midas hamalucha is a garment. Hagoyrim liyas is havas hayesh. He dresses himself up in a garment called malchus, which causes there to be the creation of yesh. Why does malchus do that? Ki ein melech beloyam. You can't be a king without a nation. What does it mean you can't be a king without a nation? V'hainu nifradim dafka. The am must be separate people. Sha'aleim yitochin hamalucha. On separate beings you can be a king. Liyos b'pchinas isnasas aleim. You could be exalted over them. V'hem yiyu be'eim, and they will be in awe in the presence of the king. Sharei al meya banim lo yikari ha'av melech. A father may have 100 children. He may have a tribe that numbers in the hundreds and in the thousands. You can't call him a melech. You could say tata, you could say father, you can't say melech. Why? Because ein melech beloy am. To be a melech, you need a nation. And a nation are people that by definition, they're detached from the king. They're separate, they're nifrit. A child is brakara da'avua. A child is part of a father. It's like the limbs of your body. Literally, the child comes from the father. He comes from the seed of the father, from the egg of the mother. Therefore, the concept of malchus, the real concept of malchus doesn't exist with the father. The father may try, but the concept of malchus, a real melech, doesn't exist. There's a quality of a relationship that is only somebody who's separate and then accepts and goes into this relationship. And the child doesn't have it. The child is lechatchil, it's one thing. It's not the concept of malucha. There's a natural, organic, holistic relationship. Al meya banim leikari av melech. So therefore, to be a melech, midas hamalucha, requires there to be otherness, to be a relationship with somebody outside of me. My relationship with my child is essentially a relationship with myself, which is why it's challenging to have a good relationship with your child, because it's challenging to have a good relationship with yourself. Children bring out very deep things in you because they're part of you. If you want to know who you are, look at your children. If you want to know who you really are, ask your children about their opinion of you. If you want to know what's happening deep inside of you, look at your children. They're essentially one thing with a father and mother. It's inseparable. That's the power of the relationship, but it's not the relationship of Malchus. The relationship of Malchus is a relationship of choice. It's the thrill and the deep connection that happens when somebody who's outside of you chooses to accept you as their leader, as their mentor, as their teacher, as their guide, whatever the form of Malchus is. And without the Am, I could never have that. You can't be a melech without the people. You have 100 children, and the children will do whatever you say. You're not going to be a melech. There's two things that are needed to be a melech. Number one, it has to be from somebody outside of you. And number two, the one outside of you has to choose it. You can't force it on them. If you force it on them, it's again not the person outside of you. You imposed it on them. A dictator is not a melech. A dictator is called a moshel. A melech is malchusei beratzon kibul alayim. So it's a paradox. It's somebody who's not you, and somebody who is not you submits and chooses that relationship, and that elevates the person into a state of melucha. And it's a thrill that can't be substituted by any other experience. And it only could happen somebody who's outside of you, the Am. It's not an internalized experience. You can't experience melucha within yourself. It's similar to the concept of marriage. All the midas, I could do a lot of things myself. There's one thing you can't do by yourself. It's called be married. You can't be married to yourself. I mean, you could, but it's not called marriage. I know the Supreme Court may alter that. But at least according to the present vocabulary, you can't be married to yourself. Why not? Why not? You have a split personality. Why can't you get married to yourself? Why not? Most people are good meshuga. Get a tax discount. The answer is because the definition of marriage is what happens to you as a result of a relationship with somebody outside of you. And ein mekachnes isha ela midaita. Other midas could be within yourself. You could love within yourself. You could sit on a mountain and write the most beautiful poetry about love. In fact, it'll be usually much more loving than if you actually are with people. As you know, people who are lovers, they sit on mountains and they love the world, they love humanity. And then when you come down from the mountain, it's not so pashut. All the midas you can experience within yourself. One thing you can't. Malchus. Malchus, you need somebody who's actually outside of you. Because it's the relationship that happens as a result of the impact that the one outside of you has on you. If it's inside of you, it's not the concept of malucha. So malucha necessitates the concept of period. And this is true in every area of life. I'm giving a simple example. Take, for example, an author. That's why we call him melech. That's the beauty of melech. Melech means that for life to happen the way it's supposed to happen, the essential part of the relationship is that we have to remain human and not godly. That's the most important component of the relationship. And this is really a revolutionary idea because we're always taught that the definition, and this is very important, we're always taught, I'm going to talk now about the system that you love. We're always taught that the definition of a relationship with God means that you become not human. You become davuk to the body, that you transcend your humanness, right? And the more you can transcend your humanness, the more close to the Rebbeinu Shalom you are. Whatever that means to transcend human, transcend your midas, to transcend your personality, to become holy, to become ruchni, and so forth. And that's one dimension. But the truth is, equally intrinsic to the relationship is the fact that you have to be ungodly. That God wanted a relationship with somebody who is not godly. He wanted a relationship with a human being. That's more important to Yiddishkeit than anything else. Va'anshe kodesh tiyunli, as the Kotzker Rebbe said. Va'anshe kodesh, the component of humanness. In other words, the fact that you're not me. What's the most important thing in a marriage? That your wife is you? No, then you're married to yourself. That's what happens to a lot of people. Masechta Gittin has to come before Masechta Kedushin. You first have to divorce yourself in order to get married. If I'm married to myself, I can't be married. So the most important quality in a relationship is that it's not me, it's you. It's not me. The challenge is Einoid Mulvadeh. There's nothing outside of him. So Melucha was that revolutionary notion that I have to create something that is experiencing itself as other, as outside. And the integrity of the relationship depends on that. And for this, the Rebbeinu Shalom has to get dressed. He has to put on the levush of Malchus to be able to become a melech, which is Ein Melech B'Loya. So here you have the paradox of a soul. A soul is really a very, very... Why are we so complicated? Especially Jews. You know why? So you have here one of the deepest definitions. We're complicated because who are we? On one level, the neshama is ayin, the neshama is mamash alakus, and on another level, the neshama becomes a yesh, the neshama becomes a nivra, because it goes through the process of malchus. And it's in that paradox of the soul that the human identity lives in. We're on one level, the neshama, if you take it back to its source, it's achim lamakim. What do we mean achim lamakim? It's a complete brother, it's a colleague. It is mamash alakus. It's basically Hashem speaking to himself, and I know, Hashem thinking to himself. Hashem processing himself. Is God self-aware? What do you think? You ever thought about this?
The concept of awareness is created.
You think God is self-aware? How many people you know are self-aware? It's not so simple to be self-aware, right? To really be self-aware. To be truly aware of self. The question is God self-aware? So God is self-aware, and that's the soul. The soul, basically, is God's self-awareness. That's the soul. In other words, you have to think here in very abstract. You have to think here in abstract. We have to learn how to think in very abstract ways. The soul, we look at a soul, we look at a tissue box and we look at a soul. We just say the soul is spiritual. But we have to stop seeing the soul really as a thing. And you have to be able to understand the soul in its most pristine form. What is a soul in its most pristine form? The soul in its most pristine form is the gilui of Hashem to himself. So it's already not atzmos, it's not the midos, but it's the way the midos are expressed through oisis hamachshava. That is the energy we call a neshama. Now what does that mean about our identity? What does that mean about our identity? It means about our identity that if you're looking what your soul is, what is it really? What is your soul in its deepest space? What is that neshama? We say a neshama is elikus, it's divine. So what does it mean? Before ata barasa, there's elikai neshama shenasata bi tahirihi. Afterwards is barasa. You don't say, l'chayre should say, the Baal HaTanya says this elsewhere, elikai neshama shenasata bi ata barasa. After you create it, then it can be pure. It can't be pure before you created it. Right? First say, ata barasa. Then tell me, and this, wow, what a pure thing. No. Neshama shenasata bi tahirihi. Before barasa. Before it was created, it was something else. It was tahira. And it remains that. In addition to that, the soul has another layer. Ata barasa, you created it. Ata yitzarta. As we'll continue here. But it starts off with tahira. The neshama starts off mamish with ayin. The neshama is basically pure elikus. It's the gili of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the neshama. Like oisis hamachshava to the midas.
So to paraphrase something you said before, so the osios of machshava, the Rabbon Shalom, with which God experienced himself, are those very same osios with which he uses for his scholars?
Those are the oisios, yeah.
So
Those
the
are the
osios
osios.
of the scholars are the same osios.
Yeah. The self-awareness of Atzilus, that's the uptouch of a neshama. God's self-awareness is already a soul. So it's already not God, because God himself is beyond identity. It's also not even the identity. It's the self-awareness of the identity. That's what the soul captures.
The question, if God is aware of himself, isn't that limiting God?
Depends how you're defining limiting.
Of course he's aware of himself.
It's the process of that's what he says, of his galus of atzmos. He himself is lav mikolim in this klal. Baal HaTanya says somewhere, it's half of a felladus, okay, needs Hezbollah, we'll talk next time. The Gemara in Eruvin has a huge machlokes. It says 2.5 years, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel had an argument. What was that? It's a classic Jewish argument. Noyach lo adam shenivra, noyach lo adam shelo nivra. Would have it been easier not to be created? Now I ask you, 2.5 years you argue about this? Ask anybody, would it have been easier not to be created, to be created? Ganz pashut, everybody knows. Ask anybody. The first Rashi in Chumash, I told you once, Bereshis bara amar Reb Yitzchak lo hayat tzarich. There was no need. Of course, Noach, what it's easy, life is easy. What, 2.5 years, Nimnu v'gamru, they finally took a vote. Noach lo shaloi nivra. Shekayach. Okay, wonderful. Wonderful news. This is mamish like Chachamim sitting for 2.5 years. Why don't you argue maybe how to fix some problems? No! They're arguing if it's easier to be created, not to be created. And what are the ramifications of this argument anyway? What are we going to do now? Noach lo shaloi nivra. It's like Eli Wiesel used to say that in the Warsaw Ghetto, they decided to take Hashem to a din Torah for the Holocaust. So they brought 3 rabbis and they summoned the Rebbeinu Shalom to din Torah for what he's doing to the Jewish people. And for hours and hours and hours. And finally the verdict was, God is guilty. And then somebody said, Mincha. So for 2.5 years you're going to argue Noach loy nivre, yen nivre, Noach nivre, as though you have a choice. Exactly. Mincha. It's time for Mincha anyway. Actually, Shachris. The Alter Rebbe Tainas, he says, the argument was, what's the purpose of life? Every person has a state of loy nivre, and every person has a state of nivra. The neshama, in its original pristine source, is tahira. It's beyond nivra. It's alakus. Then there is the neshama as it assumes identity. That's the soul that we could be more aware of. Identity. I. We call it I. The soul in its source doesn't have an I. Not because it doesn't have an I. It's the divine I. It's the divine I expressing itself. Then the neshama assumes a separate I in its own vision. One shitta is noyach loy shaloi nivre yosem nivre. The right thing for the person, noyach, is to go to the state of loy nivra much more than nivra. And then the other opinion is no, noyach loy dafke nivra yosem shaloi nivra. The loy nivra and nivra are all in the person himself. It's 2 ways how to define your identity. Should it be as a loy nivra or should it be as a nivra?
How you should behave. That's the.
It's everything.
I just wanted to say that isn't the starting point that anything we'll discuss here is really a reduction, because there's no way you talk about the Rebbeinu Shalom, self-awareness, not self-awareness. These are all at reduced levels because we really can't. There's only so far we're going to go up the ladder on this.
Of course. That's why the first yesod he said is, we don't talk about atzmos, we talk about his galus. Now you may ask, what does a Jew get from knowing this? Like, as a pilpul in such sugyas and Torah Sanister, it's like, hastadover, what's this? That's an important question. So you'll see that this Maamar, he's building up to an idea that becomes a fundamental yesod in how to understand the whole structure of Yiddishkeit, as we shall see. So don't think that this is just abstract information, even though even the abstract information is eich, but it has tremendous ramifications of how we understand what life is, what Avodas Hashem is. As we say every morning in brachas, as I mentioned, right in the morning when we wake up, Elokai, Neshama Shenasata Bi, Tahirihi, Ata Varasa, Ata Yitzarta, Ata Nafachta Bi, Vata Mashamra Bekirbi. Literally, the translation is, it's very powerful words. In fact, in the Zman of the Gemara, Moida Ani is not mentioned in Chazal, right? Moida Ani was added later. Why? The Gemara says in Brachas, when a person wakes up, what does he say? Elokai neshama shenasata bi tahiri. That's what they would say right when they woke up. They didn't do Moida Ani. Why didn't they do Moida Ani? Because, this is interesting, in the time of the Chazal, the sleep, they felt, a lot of people when they woke up, that their hands they knew what happened with their hands while they were sleeping. So even before anything, they could mention Hashem's name. Moida Ani is one of the only times we will not mention Hashem's name. Why don't you mention Hashem's name? Because since the hands were not washed yet, Moida Ani you say before Netilas Yadayim. So therefore you don't want to mention Hashem's name in a matzav of Tumah until you do Netilas Yadayim. After Netilas Yadayim, we say Elokai neshama shenasata bi tahirihi later. There's those who say in shul and those who say in the house right when they wake up after Netilas Yadayim. But in the Zman Hashas, they felt they could be careful with their hands, so therefore they would say Elokai neshama right when they woke up. They didn't say Moida Ani. So it was the first thing you say. By us, it's not mamish the first thing; it's after. What do these words mean? Literally, it means God, my God, the soul that you imbued into me is pure. Tahira is pure. You created it. You formed it, and you blew it into me. Vayipach ba'apav atana, and you guard it within me, etc. Asks the Balatanya in different Maamarim, L'cha'oire, it should have said, Elikai, Neshama shenasata bi, Ata barasa, Ata yitzarta, Ata nafacht. Before describing its pure, say that you created it. You created it, and then tell me what it looks like. It's pure. It's not pure before you created it. Neshama shenasata bi, tahirihi, and then Ata barasa. It's not pure. Before you created it, there's nothing there. First you say it's pure, and then you say you created it. The pshat is that tahirihi is before Ata barasa. Before the neshama is in the bchina of barasa, it's tahira. What does that mean? It's pure before you created it. Because the neshama doesn't begin as a creation. The neshama begins as a chelek, a lekah. So it's not creation. That's the difference between the neshama and everything else in the world. Everything else in the world is a gather of Ata barasa. You created it. The neshama is not. The neshama is a lakus. It's divine. It's not part of the bri, it's part of the boire. It's not part of creation. It's, so to speak, the boire, exactly. It's a whole different type of reality. That's why the neshama's antennas are so sensitive. Because the neshama is not part of creation. The neshama is a realm of creator. It's a whole different pchina. Verstehst Lenny?
That's the base shchinte, no?
Yeah.
That's where it came from.
Yeah. This is the base shchinte, yeah. So the first thing, neshama shenasata bi tahiri. It's pure. And what do we mean tahiri in Aramaic? Tahiru is light. Tahiri means also not pure. It's bright, it's luminescent. It's part of the Ein Sof. It's full of light. When you imagine your soul, when you imagine yourself, you have to be able to close your eyes and see yourself as pure, infinite light. That's how you have to see yourself. Pure, infinite light. It's not a chelik of the bria, it's a chelik of the boire. Now there's stage B, this version 2.0 of the soul. Ata barasa, Ata yitzarta. Now it's a whole other process. The neshama ultimately also becomes a nivra, becomes a created being. But that's really what the neshama morphs into. What the neshama is in its origin is higher than a nivra. It's a chelik of boyer, chelik of lekamima. And essentially, just to put it in context, this is what emunah means. This is what emunah, maybe this belongs in the emunah shiurim, but since it's the sugya da skin and bay, so I'll mention it here. Many people make a mistake. I mean, I spoke about this in a few of the shiurim, that emunah means stupidity. The more stupid, the more emunah. The less stupid, the less emunah. In other words, emunah means what they like to call in English blind faith. The more blind, the more faith. If you're completely blind, a lot of faith. If you open your eyes, the faith is over. You know, as long as you close your eyes, so it's a sell me the Brooklyn Bridge, sell me the Williamsburg Bridge, with the George Washington, with the Tappan Zee, because hate. The moment you open your eyes, it's all over. That type of emunah is the weakest form of conviction that's possible. You know it's a Baba Maisa. The one who told it to you know it's a Baba Maisa. Everyone is busy telling you that you have to believe Baba Maisas, and that's how you're going to get Olam Haba. Woe if that is your God. Woe if that is your Judaism. Woe unto you if that is your level of conviction, where it can't stand up to any scrutiny, to any investigation, to any logic. It's all over. The moment you start wondering, this is already heresy, you're going straight to Gehenna. Of course, such a person, if he would have grown up in a nice Muslim home in Iraq, he would have been exactly on the same level like he is now. Because there's nothing that's based, he's not even looking for truth. On the contrary, in his distorted mind, truth is the greatest contradiction to Amunah, and that's a tragedy. That's a tragedy. It's almost like if God himself would come down and say, no. What you believe about me is not who I am. They would tell God, you're an apikaitis. Get out. Don't confuse our Judaism. We don't care who you are. We have our way of talking about you. It doesn't work, you can leave. It's fine. We have our way. We have our tradition. We have our Messiah. We don't go away from our Messiah. Even if God comes, it's not an issue. It almost sounds like that in some situations. Like, I don't care for truth. Yeah. Somebody once asked somebody, he says, tell me, if you had to choose between God and truth, who would you choose? The man said, of course God. What's the question? And he didn't realize how pathetic that is. If God is not synonymous with truth, it's worth nothing. It's not worth the piece. It's not worth a tissue is worth more than it. At least a tissue is not a lie. A tissue is a good thing. You wipe your nose with it. It has some use. A God that's not synonymous with truth, it's a joke. It's a joke within jokes within jokes. So emunah has nothing to do with the concept of being primitive, of being blind. People say, I believe blindly. Don't be blind and stop believing. Who asked you? It's not what emunah is. Emunah means conviction, certainty. So what is the real concept of emunah? The real concept of emunah is not inferior to logic. It transcends logic. What does it have to do? It has to do with neshama shenasat to be tahirihi behind atabarasa. You see, the yesodus of Yiddishkeit, the Jews didn't accept because they were blind. On the contrary, there's no religion in the world that encourages the use of the mind as much as Judaism. You can't expect, the whole culture of Talmud Bavli is you have to use your mind. So do you think it makes sense to tell people, use your mind infinitely, don't stop using your mind, but then when it comes to the yesodus of everything of Yiddishkeit, suddenly there's no mind anymore? It doesn't work that way. If you have a religion that says don't think, fine, so religion says don't think. If you have a religion that encourages people to use their minds non-stop, which Yiddishkeit does, it sees the mind as a tremendous gift of Hashem that's there to be used. Suddenly, when it comes to the Yesodus of Yadus, you say, there's no mind anymore. Nasa v'nishma. What does Nasa v'nishma mean? Nasa v'nishma means we will do. Nasa doesn't mean blind faith. Nasa v'nishma means we will do, right? Even before we understand the reason for it. On the contrary, when did the Jews say Nasa v'nishma? There were 10 Makkahs. They went out of Mitzrayim. They experienced Kriyas Yamsuf. They were standing at the mountain. And after Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf, Moshe offered them the Torah. And they said, we don't have to know what it says in the Torah. Nasa v'nishma, we're ready to accept it. We want a relationship with Hashem. On the contrary, it was an extremely, I'll give an example, very simple example so you'll understand. Let's say you have a personal trainer, right? The personal trainer saved your life. You were overweight, you were obese, you had high cholesterol, high blood pressure, you felt horrible, you were on the verge of your death, you went up a flight of stairs, you couldn't breathe, v'chuli, v'chuli. And the personal trainer, Maamar, she saved you, turned around your life, and he's been working with you for 15 years. And after 15 years, you feel like a mensch, you feel great, you feel awesome. And one day, your personal trainer comes to you, and he gives you an exercise to do. He says, okay, I want you for the next hour to do this and this. I want you to move your thumb, I don't know, like this 9,000 times. What would you do? If you trust him, he's a personal trainer, you know how brilliant he was, you know how well he knows your body. So you might say, why? What's the point of this? I'm not in the mood. So he'll say, trust me, I know what I'm doing. You'll probably listen to him and you'll do it. Even though you may not understand how it works, you may not understand the benefit, you may not understand why he wants you to do it, and you may not be in the mood of it. I mean, it may be a good idea. A doctor gives you a prescription, yeah? And you go to the pharmacy and you take your prescription, and it's very, very bitter. You're not in the mood, nor do you understand how this medicine is going to get rid of the infection. But you do it, yeah? Why do you do it? Why do you do it?
Trust.
Because you're an idiot? Does it make sense to follow the doctor's prescription even though you don't understand? It makes sense. Why? Why? Why do you trust the doctor?
You have a history with him.
He knows more than you. You have a history with him. He always helped you, right? A lot of people go to him. He has a good reputation. He helped you. He helped your wife. He helped your kid. He's a good doctor. But now let me ask you something. Somebody walks over in the street to you and sees that you're sneezing, okay? And he says, here, go get this prescription and take it 3 times a day. You'd follow him? No. And if you do follow him, you're a shaita. And if you say, why should I follow you? And he'll tell you, emunah. Nasa v'nishma. Meflektish kenakashas. No, excuse me. Meflektish kenakashas. when I know somebody, right, is a good doctor. He's helped me and he's here for me. But some guy in the street I meet, if I take you out of Mitzrayim, I liberate you from slavery, I split the sea for you, and I save you and I show you this type of love, and then I say, I want a covenant with you, and you say, you know what, I'm in. I'm in. You don't have to tell me all the details. You don't have to tell me exactly what the mitzvahs are. I'm in. That was Nasav and Ishma. You're typhus.
But still, the mushal with the doctor, there's an area that it is blind over there because you don't really know what he's giving you.
Right.
So
but
there is a place after Yediyah that comes on
Okay.
you don't know something.
Ein Chanami. But it's not miyusad on blindness. You understand what I'm saying?
Part of Emunah is the area that we don't really understand.
Right. Ein Chanami. You're right. And I'm comfortable, and fakert. Let's say you tell the doctor, I don't take medicine without understanding how it works. He says, no problem, go to medical school. It just might take you 12 years, and by that time you'll probably be dead if you don't get rid of this infection. So it's kedai to take the antibiotic and then go study. Right? So you're going to tell a person, you need to be healthy, you need to be alive to be able to study. So therefore, that itself means, if you're going to wait till you understand everything, your soul also needs medicine. It's not kedai to wait, and because fakert, if you'll take the medicine, you'll be able to be in a better position to understand.
So how does that stem with the Medrash or Mashal, whatever it is, where before Hashem created the world, he went to each nation, he went to Esav, and he said, what's in it? He said, Ritzicha. He says, no, it's not for me.
Yeah.
Then he went to the Bnei Yisrael, he said, not Nishma, before the world was created, before all these history that you're talking about.
No, I'll be shot by Har Sinai. He came.
Isn't that Mashal before?
No.
Before, is that the way they tell it in Yeshiva? No.
I don't think so.
Before Hashem created the world? No.
Before Har Sinai.
Huh?
Before Har Sinai. In other words, the Jews said, our relationship with God is not going to be conditional.
When did say, I don't want Ritzicha, what's your tzah?
What?
But before he created the world.
No.
No?
It says Hechzir al Kolum Avalosh. Hechzir al Kolum Avalosh.
But even when they said Naisav and Ishma, it seems like it was still weak, that Emunah. Because until Purim, it took years.
Okay, that was another union of Kaf Aleim.
Okay, I'm saying, even there.
Yeah, that was a whole other union of Kaf Aleim. What Kaf Aleim means, yeah.
It was still weak.
The reason they said before, Nasa and Ishma, that was the after the
The Hakdamas Nasel and Ishma, yeah. Hakdamas Nasel and Ishma.
There's a Gemara someplace.
That's why, yeah. The Gemara, when the Mishnah speaks about Kabbalah's oil Malchus Shamayim. What does Kabbalah's oil Malchus Shamayim mean? People quote the word Kabbalah's oil, but they miss the last two words. Except the yoke. The yoke of who? Of Malchus Shamayim. If I come with you, I take a washing machine, I put it on one shoulder, I take another washing machine, I put it on another shoulder, and I say, walk the rest of your life with two washing machines. You say, you're crazy? I say, yeah, Kabbalah's oil. A Yid carries a yoke. Kabbalah's oil, a Yid carries a yoke. That's exactly what it sounds like. Sometimes parents or teachers tell a child to do something. Children are smart. They say it doesn't make sense. It's a foolish thing. It's corrupt. It's unjust. What do you tell the child? Kabbalah's oil. Mefreknish keine kashas. We don't ask any questions. We accept the yoke. What do they accomplish by this? The child learns that Kabbalah's oil means any corruption, any stupidity. If somebody's in a bad mood, or having a bad day or a bad temper, their excuse to cover up for not thinking and for doing something stupid is Kabbalah's oil. We take a precious concept of Judaism and we make it hated by the person. Whenever he hears now the word Kabbalah's oil, he shrinks. He feels it's synonymous with abuse because it was used in an abusive way. Instead of saying, I'm having a bad day, I'm sorry, we use beautiful words, Kabbalah's oil. Kabbalah's oil has two words, Malchus Shamayim. What's that Malchus Shamayim? Malchus Shamayim means, if a child appreciates the fact that God created him, and God loves him unconditionally, and God wants him to live the most successful, happiest, fulfilled life, and he gives him prescriptions, So even if I'm not in the mood of doing what my personal trainer wants me to do, or my doctor wants me to do, or I may not understand exactly how it works, I will happily embrace the yoke. Why? Because this yoke is the best thing for me to do. The stupidest thing for me to do is say, I don't do things if I don't understand them fully, and I'm not in the mood. If the only time you would come to a shiur, you would go to the gym, is when you're in the mood, you know what you would look like. The power of a person is that I could do things when I'm not in the mood. So what? You're not in the mood. You don't want to be limited. Kabbalah's oil frees you. It frees you from having to know everything and having always to be in the mood. But it's not an idea of abuse, of crushing a person. Fakert. It's to bring out the greatness of a person, the best of a person. Yeah. Somebody once asked an interesting question. He said, there's two types of relationships. People go to prison and they have a prison warden. And the prison warden whips them into shape. You don't show up on time, you go to solitary confinement. He really whips them into shape. You're in prison for 15 years, Khalila, you go out of prison, you'll call up the prison warden before Rosh Hashanah and say, I just wanted to call you, which you accept. You're never going to mention his name on your lips, and when you do mention him, it's going to come with a few titles that are not so complimentary. The same thing happens in the army. People go to the army, and they have a commander who puts you in a boot camp. And if you don't salute the right way, it's 150 push-ups. And if you don't show up for training, he'll take away supper from you. And you leave the army, and you'll always talk about your commander, and you're going to call him up once a year to wish him happy Hanukkah and a good year. Why? They both tortured you. The answer is the prison warden tortured you in order to torture you. And the commander in your platoon challenged you in order to make you a man, to make you a soldier. They both tortured you. They both put you through difficult situations. One wanted to destroy you. He wanted you should feel like a prisoner, a shmata. And one wanted to bring out your greatness. And there's no greatness that is created without tremendous challenge and without stimulation and without difficult moments. There's no difficulty, lefum tzaira agra. It's a whole different experience. Kabbalah's El Malchus Shamayim is there to enhance you. It's there to turn you into the greatest possible person. It's not there to crush you and destroy you. It's a whole different concept. That's why you can't talk about Kabbalah's soil if you don't first talk about God. If you don't explain people what God is, what Torah is, what mitzvahs is, becomes worthless. People think Kabbalah soil means the more pressure, the better, the more terror, the better, and the more you feel horrible, the better a Jew you are. Some people think that they have this idea that every agmas nefesh you have is an achas ruach for Hashem. What a horrible statement to tell people. Every time you suffer, God smiles. What a beautiful thing. It's a way of legalizing suffering. The more I make you suffer, the more schar you're going to have in Olam Haba. I could abuse you, can abuse your family, I could torture you. And remember, every time you say, this is horrible, more Olam Haba. And there's nobody here to prove it, so it works. How do you know there's no more Olam Haba? This is a horrible thing. The more you suffer, the happier God is. And then a second later you have to say, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. You should love God. This one who smiles every time you suffer. And for every suffering, every krech's more Olam Haba. Come on. Yeah? You can't create normal people like
Why do we
this.
thank God for taking us out of Egypt, since we suffered so much in Egypt?
No, so that's why we thank.
I mean, if someone puts you in prison, and you get whipped, you get beaten
Oh,
up.
you mean because he threw us into Egypt?
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? I mean, we went down to Egypt, but Paro is the one who enslaved the Jewish people. I mean,
Well,
we lived in Poland, but it was the German.
Say, now it's time to take you out? It doesn't make sense, logical sense.
What doesn't make
I
sense?
can't put us there in the first place, he's saying.
Well, you mean
Yeah, thank you for telling us out. But it would have been nicer if you didn't put it there in the first
he
place.
did it? He did it.
One day, fine.
When the
210 years of
you mean he
suffering?
told Yaakov to go down there? Yeah, but the
Famine
genocide,
made the whole thing happen.
but the genocide of the Jewish people was Parai. I mean,
If Hashem doesn't allow him to do it, then it's not power.
okay, now you're asking the question of why God allows there to be suffering in the world. That's a good question. That's beyond the confinements of this shiur. Right? Okay. Fine. You're asking a good question. Why does a good God allow suffering in the world? Fine. That's a wonderful question. They're inuos.
I say no pain.
Okay, fine, to purify them. But the point is to tell people that the more I abuse you, the more you should be happy, because you goyim and achas ruach l'mayla is it's not a fair thing to say, because you put people in such a prison they're not allowed to protest against any torture, because every time they're tortured, it's more levyasin and olam haba.
And if yes, they're a parah.
What?
Those who do it, they're real parah.
Now,
I didn't use God's name, so.
right, Pari, you're saying Pari was better. Okay,
I mean that.
fine.
No, I said.
Okay. There's a lot of issues coming out here, you understand, yeah? Yeah, Pari said, I don't know God. Liya Oiri, I'm the boss. You're saying when people say it's not even me, I'm just working for Hashem. I'm working for Hashem, so that's why I put your house on fire, because I work for Hashem. Okay, so, you're in a safe place. Huh?
Gekriegt zwar zweiten.
Gekrächtet, was die wir sind in der Stadt. Huh? This is not a safe place? Okay. What makes you not feel safe over here?
Get here too.
What?
People who use God's name get here.
Huh? The camera's on me, don't worry. The camera's only on me. Ich bin der Einzige. I'm the only villain in this room. Nobody else is. The camera's only on me. No, it doesn't get turned around anywhere. It doesn't even show him or him. And these two are anyway off the hook, because they're nicht in da. This is
Baruch Hashem.
You know what I mean? Okay. So, what's the nekuda? So, what is emunah? What is emunah? What is really emunah? Emunah never competes with seichel. Emunah is something that's deeper than seichel. It's neshama shenasata bi tahira before ata barasa. In the world of barasa, that's where intellect has to play a role. You live in the world and now you wonder, where did this world come from? Who created the world? Who is responsible for every detail and nuance of the design of the entire universe and all of its details? So with your mind, you come to an awareness that there's a creator, there's a soul behind creation. There's a consciousness in creation. That's seichel. Emunah is, the neshama is part of the boire. Since the neshama is part of the boire, the neshama experiences the creator like you experience yourself. How do you know that you exist? How do you know that you exist? I'm going to prove to you that you don't exist. Okay? I'm going to prove to you that you don't exist. Okay? So I'll prove it to you. And then you're going to go away from the shul and say, oh my God, I don't exist. So you're going to come home and you're going to tell your wife, I don't exist. Your wife will say, I always said that. Thank God the rabbi proved it to you. So now you're going to walk around and say, can anybody prove to me that I exist? And somebody is going to answer and slug up my proofs. You're going to say, Baruch Hashem, I feel I exist now. This usually doesn't happen. Why doesn't that happen? Because the feeling that you exist is not something that's subjected to questions or answers. Even if I ask you a question on your existence, it's not going to make you feel you exist less, unless you have other issues. But if you don't have other issues, you know that you exist. How do you know? Because of psasvara, because of raya, because it's you. You know that you exist. First of all, you see your existence, you feel your existence, you experience your existence. Can we say we're all crazy? Yes, we could say that. If you want, you can argue anything. But we all know what we exist. Are there questions on our existence? Trust me, a lot of questions. If you'll speak to quantum mechanics physicists, they'll prove to you that you don't exist. It's all imagination. Nothing exists. A cup doesn't exist. Once you leave your house doesn't exist. Your house exists only when you're in it. The moment you leave your house, it doesn't exist. And when a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there, it doesn't make a sound either. It only makes a sound when you're there. Okay, they can explain this to you, but you're not going to question your existence, and then you're going to say, oh, now you gave me an answer, now I know that I exist. That's what emunah is. Emunah is, the neshama is part of the boire, it's not part of the nivra. So the neshama experiences the creator like you experience yourself. A question doesn't weaken emunah, and an answer doesn't strengthen emunah. And that's the yisoid of emunah. This is how the Lubavitcher Rebbe wants to find emunah, al pitoris hanister. Emunah is azach, was a kasha macht es nicht schwacher, und a teretz macht es nicht starker. Probably the best definition for emunah. A question doesn't weaken it, and an answer doesn't strengthen it. If emunah would mean like people think, you believe, of course a question weakens it. I ask you a question, ooh, it's a good question. And then when I answer it, Baruch Hashem, I have an answer. But that's not emunah, that's seichel. That's a different path. The path of intellect. You ask a question, ooh, good question. You have an answer, good answer. Emunah means the soul is divine. The soul experiences the divine. You'll ask questions von Hein bis Morgen. Ask me 1,000 questions how I feel I exist. Good questions. It's not going to weaken your sense of existence. Emunah doesn't compete with intellect. Emunah transcends it. It doesn't need it. Intellect serves a tremendous role in life. It takes you to a certain place, till the door. And then Seichel says, I can't pass the door. Now I give it over to Emunah. Emunah comes from the neshama of Tahira, which is before Atabaras. It's a different pchina. Emunah is l'mayla min ha-seichel. It's not l'mata min ha-seichel. Never competes. Anybody who thinks Emunah means we don't believe in thinking doesn't understand what Emunah is. Thinking is a tremendous gift, and the mind has to be used. The mind can reach a certain point, and it can't go further. The mind can't experience God. The mind can prove that there is a God. What God is, how does the mind know? The mind doesn't understand Hashem. Emunah is the experience of the neshama as a chelik elokam mimal. That's a whole different thing. And that's why when it comes to Emunah, there's no difference between Jews. The greatest and the smallest have exactly the same Emunah, because Emunah is a quality of the soul. It doesn't have even to do with observance. It's not like a frum Jew has more Emunah and a secular Jew has less Emunah. That doesn't exist in the world of Emunah. In the world of Seichel, a person could know more, know less. A person can do more, do less. A person can observe more, observe less. A person can learn more, learn less. In the world of a chelik elokam mimal, it's all identical. There's no difference.
It's the same concept as a set of Kalaman?
Similar, yeah. Because it's the nature of the soul. It may be hidden. He may not be in touch with his soul, but it's the nature of the soul. But the frum Jew may also not be in touch with his soul. Sometimes much less.
How can somebody be over on a minute, not having a minute?
A person, there's no such a thing, a person doesn't have emunah. A person may not be aware of his emunah. It's like, if there's music, my ears will hear it. I could plug my ears and not hear music. But if I just open up my ears, I'll hear the music. Emunah is a skill. It's a chush of the neshama. It's antennas that every soul has. If you cover the antennas, you plug your ear, you close, you blindfold your eyes, you won't see. But you don't have to create it. Emunah is not created. There's no Jew in the world who has sveikus in Emunah. Even Lenny. There's no Jew in the world who has sveikus in Emunah. You know why? You can't have sveikus in Emunah. Emunah is the color of your soul. Emunah is, you have a chelik elokam mimal. You can't have sveikus in Emunah. You can have sveikus in seichel, not in Emunah. You understand? People say, I have sveikus in Emunah. You don't have sveikus in Emunah. No Jew ever had sveikus in Emunah. No Jew will ever have sveikus in Emunah. Sveikus in Emunah means doubts in Emunah. You can't have a doubt in your Emunah. Your soul is divine. There's no doubt there. You have sveikus in processing the concepts intellectually. Good. No problem. But Emunah is never affected. And this is identical in every single Jew. There's no difference.
So when we grew up,
When you look at a Jew and you say, as a goy, that's somebody who doesn't understand the yesodus of all of Pnimiyus HaTorah. Anybody who even tasted, not 10%, anybody who even tasted one tip from Torah Sabal Shem Tov would not look at a Jew and say, as a goy. You don't speak like that. It means you don't understand what a Jew is. For you, a Jew means a shtreimel. That's not what a Jew is.
So why is Levish such a significant thing?
Where? What does Levush have to do with Emunah? I don't know what they taught you about red things.
so what is that?
Levushim are fine. What's that to do with Emunah? Huh? An atheist Jew also has Emunah.
Then what is he saying that he doesn't believe?
His mind is saying he doesn't believe. His mind. Faket, you want to see, sometimes you see the biggest Emunah in atheist Jews. You know that, yeah? You know why? You'll see that atheist Jews are not regular atheists. Atheist Jews deny God with tremendous passion. You ever saw that? Okay, let's get to know them. You have a lot around you, don't worry. You don't have to go, some people with levushim are also atheists. Jews who are atheists, you'll see, they deny God with religious fervor. Their atheism is a religious atheism. You know why? Because it's coming from their emunah. You could love your wife, you can hate your wife. You can't ignore your wife. MS, anybody here knows how to ignore their wife? You could try for a day. It's not going to work. You can love your wife, you can hate your wife. You can love your husband, you can hate your husband. You can't ignore your wife. It will eat up on your kishkas. Why? Because she's your wife. Jews can love God. Jews can hate God. Jews don't know how to ignore God. They never did. They don't know how to ignore Him. I was once at a lecture, I was talking about Emunah and Hashem. So somebody gave a scream, He doesn't exist! I said, so what are you getting so upset about something that doesn't exist? I never saw somebody get so angry about something that doesn't exist. Relax. It doesn't exist. Baruch exist. Because it sits inside of him, so he has to deny it with tremendous passion. Jewish atheism is religious. In fact, all Jews are religious. Jews don't know how to be not religious. Some Jews are religious by being religious, and some Jews are religious by being anti-religious. But they're also religious. They're anti-religious with religious fervor, the same passion. And sometimes they're more religious than the religious. Because their whole religion comes out in their anti-religion. You'll see Jewish liberals are unique type of liberals. Jewish atheists are unique type of atheists. The Rebbe was once talking about the issues with the Arabs and this. So he said, as a Yidden haben a koyach emunah. Jews have a koyach emunah and slamayla min adas. They took that koyach emunah and instead of using it on Hashem, they used it on Arafat. They'll believe in them even if it's not rational. They're destroying you. What are you giving him? He wants to blow you up with your wives and children. Emunah, he means well. He wants peace. They used the koyach emunah of a Jew. They used it on Arafat, on the Arabs. But it's the same inyan. It's this conviction that's unbelievably powerful. It's just you're playing the wrong song. Use emunah for God, not for Arafat. And for Islamists who want to destroy you and your families. You have to use a little seichel, not your emunah over there. You're typhus? You're not typhus. That's fine.
There's no bechira by emunah?
No.
Stuck with it.
Call it stuck. I don't know why you want to call it stuck.
This atheist that doesn't want to believe. It doesn't have
If he's a neshama, it's a chelik elikam mimal. Do you have bechira to experience that you exist? Unless you'll erst exist. You'll erst exist. You're going to feel yourself like you never did, especially if you fall in a certain place.
Exchanging the word emunah to das.
No.
No.
Emunah is like when you see something.
It's emunah, it's das.
I'll give you an example. I think I gave this example in one of the shiurim. A Jew is, you'll see, people will read Sifrei Chassidus, especially like the Zidditch of other Sifrei Chassidus, and they'll always say, Chas v'shalom to go with your seichel. Only emunah. So people read this and they say, you see, all these conversations are against Yiddishkeit. The main thing is emunah, not to think. So let me give you an example. Your father is taking you to your chuppah. He takes you to your chuppah. They start singing, and you're going to the chuppah. And you turn to your father and say, why are you holding me? Wer bist du? And I'm your father. You say, I'm not sure. Let's go do a DNA test. Let's test the DNA. Let's match it. Your father looks at you. He said, I don't understand. You're 21 years old. We gave birth to you. We raised you. We had Mesiras Nefesh for you. I paid every bill. I nurtured you. I sheltered you. I educated you. Everything. I bought now a house. I'm going to support you in Koilel for the next 39 and a half years. For starters. I'm paying for your chasana. Me and your mother and I sacrificed your life. When you were 3 years old, there was an emergency. You had to be in a hospital for 3 months. I was there Yom V'Layla. You come to me now and you want a DNA match? When I'm taking you to your chuppah? You say, I'm not sure you're my father. Say, okay, let's go get a DNA match. So we go, we stop the chuppah, DNA, I'm your father. Say, Baruch Hashem. Now I can go to the chuppah with you. Now I know you're my father. You say, this kid has some issues. Why? What's wrong? What's wrong is, I want to ask you a question. If you grew up with a father, especially, I'm not talking about a father who was functional and loving and good and at least half normal. Let's not do 100% normal. Divrei Torah al haroiv. Okay. At least 50% normal. Okay. And if you could be as normal as that with your kids, if you could remain 50% same. You have a father, yeah? Yeah. And I'm a father. So now I ask you. I have a father, I have a mother. If my mother goes, my father shnaf and olam members, but I have a mother son. My mother goes and she tests DNA and she shows me and she says, look, I'm your mother. I proved it. It's going to be moisif something in my relationship with my mother. It's nothing. It doesn't add anything. I grew up with this woman. I know this woman from the moment in the womb and out of the womb. It's my mother. I know. Now you have proof. So it's like the guy who came out of a base Mishagoyim. He was in an institution for 6 years. And you have to get it settled that you're healthy. So the doctor said, we determined that you're healthy, you can go out. So he would walk in the street, he would stop people, and he would say, are you normal? They would say, yeah. He would say, prove it. They say, we don't have proof. He said, I have proof. The doctor says, I'm normal. So you understand that I'm more normal than everybody else. I'm the only one who has documentation that I'm normal. Oy va'avoy. To that normalcy, right? My mother has proved that she's my mother. Oy va'avoy. That's how I know she's my mother from DNA. But what happens if you're an adopted kid? What happens if you don't have a father and mother? You're an adopted child. You're a tinik shenishba. You never knew your father and mother, and one day a woman comes over to you and says, Shalom Aleichem, ich bin da Mama. You say, excusez-moi. She says, let's go do DNA. Now the DNA is choshev. Now the DNA is everything. Now with DNA, you have proof she's your mother. You need it. You know why you need it? Because you never knew who she was. That's the difference of emunah and seichel. Seichel is like you'll prove it through DNA. You'll prove through DNA that God exists. You'll prove through DNA that Torah is min hashamayim. You'll prove all these things. Beautiful. That's if you're tinik shenishba. If you never grew up with God, if you never felt God, if you never experienced God, you need DNA. But Yidden who lived with God every moment, they saw it, they experienced it. Now you're going to start sitting me and give me shiurim on emunah, basics of emunah, does God exist, how to prove. Come on. It's like my mother's going to come to me and prove to me she's my mother. Oy va'avoy. But what if I didn't grow up with my mother? Yes, you need DNA. That's the difference. You understand? So it's not a stira. Emunah is not afraid of DNA. If my mother tells me, if my father tells me by the chuppah, you want to go get DNA? Go get DNA. But trust me, you don't need it. Oh, you're afraid. I'm not afraid. It's not going to be moist if anything. If my father and mother prove to me that I'm their child, now finally I'm going to develop an emotion. Imagine your mother comes to you with a letter of the DNA. She proves she's your mother. Now finally you're my mother. It's not moisif. Emunah is azach, akasha macht es nicht starker, a teretz macht es nicht starker, akasha macht es nicht schwacher, a teretz macht es nicht starker. You're not going to develop deeper feelings or conviction that she's your mother as a result. Not because you're afraid of it. You're not afraid. My mother's not afraid to get a DNA match. She knows what the answer is going to be. She's my mother. Emunah is never afraid of investigation. It doesn't need investigation. The soul experiences its mother. It experiences its father. But we don't have that always. Huh?
We are not like adopted.
We're adopted, especially some of us. Yeah.
If you're adopted, what's that called? Not emunah? You have to show.
You still have it, but it's completely not revealed.
You're searching
So you have to start, you search. It's there.
Search for the connection.
And you'll get there also, but there's a search. Now you can't tell somebody, was darfst du seichel? Who do you need it? Get it out. Emunah. But this kid doesn't know anything about his father, about his mother. Show him b'chalal that there's a relationship, there's a connection, it exists. That's why people think there's a big fight between. It's not. If you understand the oimek ha'inyan, it's two beautiful concepts, beautiful experiences. And in the world of Emunah, it's not that you're afraid of Seichel. No parent is afraid of getting a DNA test. They know what the results are going to be. It's just not going to add anything. It's not going to enhance your experience of fatherhood. If my child tells me, Tati, I hate you, and I wish you weren't my father, it ever happens to you? I wish somebody else was my Tati. I say, wait. I go, I do a DNA, and I say, hey, look! And what do you think the child goes, oh, now I love you, you're the best thing in the world. Big deal. It's not, we're not dealing with that level. You understand? It's not Moisef. It's not Goyrei. It's a whole different. He experiences me. Fakert, he's upset at me because I'm his father. If it wouldn't be his father, he wouldn't be able to be upset. Your father, you could say you hate. In an orphanage, kids don't tell the people that they hate them because they don't have the security. When you're secure with somebody, you say, I hate you, because you know they're not leaving you tomorrow. In an orphanage, kids don't say, I hate you, because there's no security. You understand? So that's the two bchinas of the neshama. There's the neshama tahirihi, that's emunah. Then there's ata barasa, that's already where seichel comes in. That's a different bchina. And both are true. In one world, there's emunah. Why? The soul sees it. The soul experiences it. It's like you have eyes. You see it. If he's going to ask me, somebody's going to prove to me that the Moshe is in Australia. So it can't be. I saw him by the shear. You'll say, no, Akasha, I'll prove to you that he's in Australia today. Is it going to weaken my awareness that he was here? No. And if somebody comes up with a teretz, say, oh, now it makes sense. It's a good kasha, it's a good teretz. I see him here. Unless I'm crazy, which may be. Huh? I could say I'm crazy, but if I want to rely on my eyes, there's no question in the world that's going to make me doubt that he's here. It may be a great question. That's what emunah is. The soul sees, the soul experiences. So you have a question, good question. Do I have an answer? Oder nicht? If it's real emunah, there's no question.
The reason why people don't want to talk about it is because everybody understands that the child asking the father when he did a chuppah, that it's insulting. It's not a healthy conversation.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. For the Jew who saw God, who danced with Hashem every day, it's like, really? You're not going to talk about DNA? Intelligent design, evolution, this, we're going to prove it, astronomy, cosmology, science, biology. Really? We're going to go to a biologist to prove that you're my father? Why? I sit with my father all day. You're right. It's insulting. That's why they were very upset. They were very, very upset. There were those who wrote terrible about investigations and seichel. There was a famous argument between the Zidditscheiver and the Bnei Yissaschar. You're familiar? Rabbi Herschel Zidditscheiver, Rabbi Rattenberg's Zayda, right? The Zidditscheiver. You're familiar with him, yeah? Some of you grew up probably with these names, no? Huh? Not with the Titus. Okay. Reb Tzvi Hirsch of Zidditscheiv. He was called Sar Beis HaZoy. He was one of the great Chachmei from the big Gedolei Yisrael of his days, the 1800s. Reb Herschel Zidditscheiver. So he has a lot of svarim. So he has a sefer. It's called Sur Meirav Asei Toiv. He goes out b'cherev u'b'chanis against everybody, including the Rambam and the Chovos HaLevavos, because all of them prove that there's a God. He says, "What's proof? What proof? It's disgusting." He says, imagine somebody takes you out of Egypt. He makes makas. He splits the sea. He gives you the Torah. He feeds you for 40 years. And then you look at him after 40 years and say, how do I know you exist? Oh, let me look at the stars. I'm going to study the stars and say you exist. He says, what's a chutzpah that Jews are asking how you know God exists? So Didicher, he says, I can't believe the Chovos HaLevavos is such a chassid should write like this, because Chovos HaLevavos says you have to prove that Hashem exists, and he gets into all the proofs. Chovos HaLevavos. Shar HaYichud and Shar HaBchina. He gets into all the proofs that Hashem exists. The Didicher is against it. Even the Rambam, he's like, I can't understand. It's such a merid, it's disgusting, he says. So the Bnei Yissaschar, you know the Bnei Yissaschar was, yeah? Reb Tzvi Elimelech Shapiro of Dinov, who was a contemporary of the Didicher, and he wrote Hagos on the Sefer Sur Meirav Asei Toiv. And he himself attacks philosophy constantly in Bnei Yissaschar. every month in Donnerstück, every month he attacks philosophy, right? But here he goes on the Zidshev, he says, excusez-moi. He says, this Yid, meiroiv tzitkusoi udveikusoi va'avosoi Hashem, he couldn't understand that some people don't have his experiences. They didn't have Kriyas Yamsuf, didn't have Yitzias Mitzrayim. What do you want them to do? And he says, what did he expect Avraham Avinu to do? What did the Zidshev expect Avraham Avinu to do? He was by Terach. Terach said, there's no God, there's a Getchka. What did Avraham Avinu do? Avraham Avinu started to use his mind. He started to investigate. You're going to scream at Avraham Avinu too? He says there's many people who are just the same way. They don't know. They're starting to search. They start asking questions. What are you attacking them? You can't attack them. So he shows beautifully how the Zidshev was a holy Jew. So he couldn't understand. What are you making Litzanis? It's like by the chuppah. Your father had Mesiras Nefesh for you for 20, 30 years, and now suddenly you want DNA? You want proof? Disgusting. Your mother kept you for 3 years in her bed because you didn't stop crying a whole night. And even after that, till you were 11, she went to you 20 times a night to give you a bottle. And then suddenly you're like, prove to me you're my mother, let's look in the stars. Let's go to a scientist. But if you're not in that state... So every Yid has this, but it could be concealed. The Munah could be concealed. It has to be Nizgala. Which question? Huh? No. Oh. Yeah, you're right.
Now I understand why some people can't grasp the idea of the need of the Emunah lectures. They grew up with God all life. They can't understand why.
The Bismillah Mitzchos. The Bismillah Mitzchos. The Bismillah Mitzchos, huh?
No, I see it.
A Yid that has a fire to Hashem, he's like, what are you investigating? That's what is, right?
I was troubled with some people that can't understand why don't.
But there's another reason. But there's another reason why people can't understand. You're being Malamed Schus. You're being Malamed Schus. It's important to remember there's another story happening. And that is because many people believe that Emunah has to be insecure. That's a whole different problem. This Emunah is not insecure. This Emunah is very secure. My mother is not afraid of getting a DNA match. She just doesn't need it, and I don't need it. You understand? A real Emunah is not afraid of questions. If you're ever afraid of questions, there's a problem. Emunah doesn't need questions, doesn't need answers.
A lot of English Yidden went through the Mechumah because Hashem is just...
They have neshamas. English Yidden, you think don't have neshamas?
No.
They also have neshamas.
They went through it blindly.
It's not blind. Every Yid has a neshama. A baba, all your babas that said Tehillim, and this, they had a neshama. It wasn't stam they were blind. You understand? They were connected. Of course they were connected. They weren't blind people. You understand? But the big Maaminim are not afraid of questions. The Rambam also was connected. He didn't ask questions because he wasn't connected. He wanted that the Seichel shouldn't block the Emunah. You understand? He didn't ask questions because he was not connected. The Rambam, the Chovos HaLevavos, they didn't want the Seichel should block the Emunah. They wanted the Emunah should permeate the intellect also. It shouldn't be two worlds. In the world of Emunah, yeah. In the world of Seichel, I don't get it. It should all be one. Das Teufels. Anar. Ich will sein Anar. It could be concealed. It has to be Nizgala. Which question? Huh? No. Oh. Yeah, you're right.
Now I understand why some people can't grasp the idea of the need of the Emunah lectures. They grew up with God all life. They can't understand why.
The Bismillah Mitzchos. The Bismillah Mitzchos. The Bismillah Mitzchos, huh?
No, I see it.
A Yid that has a fire to Hashem, he's like, what are you investigating? That's what is, right?
I was troubled with some people that can't understand why.
But there's another reason. But there's another reason why people can't understand. You're being Malamed Schus. You're being Malamed Schus. It's important to remember there's another story happening. And that is because many people believe that emunah has to be insecure. That's a whole different problem. This emunah is not insecure. This emunah is very secure. My mother is not afraid of getting a DNA match. She just doesn't need it, and I don't need it. You understand? A real emunah is not afraid of questions. If you're ever afraid of questions, there's a problem. Emunah doesn't need questions, doesn't need answers.
A lot of English Yidden went through the Mechumah because Hashem is just...
They have neshamas. English Yidden, you think don't have neshamas?
No.
They also have neshamas.
They went through it blind.
It's not blind. Every Yid has a neshama. A baba, all your babas that said Tehillim, and this, they had a neshama. It wasn't stam they were blind. You understand? They were connected. Of course they were connected. They weren't blind people. You understand? But the big ma'aminim are not afraid of questions. The Rambam also was connected. He didn't ask questions because he wasn't connected. He wanted that the seichel shouldn't block the emunah. You understand? He didn't ask questions because he was not connected. The Rambam, the Chovos HaLevavos, they didn't want the seichel should block the emunah. They wanted the emunah should permeate the intellect also. It shouldn't be two worlds. In the world of emunah, yeah. In the world of seichel, I don't get it. It should all be one. Das Teufels. Anar, ich will sein Anar. Das meint das. Yeah. What did the Baal Shem Tov mean? No. What's Pshat Emunah Pshat? People think the Baal Shem Tov said, after everything, ich will sein Anar. So you think Baal Shem Tov says, I want to be a fool. Baal Shem Tov says, I want, after all the seichel, what I want is emunah. Dveikos.
Be in the door.
I want to go inside the door. Yeah, not the Baal Shem Tov wasn't afraid of seichel. Baal Shem Tov was a genius. You understand? Emunah is not lower than seichel. Emunah is higher than seichel. Emunah is not inferior. That's the difference between Muslims, Christians, cults. What's the difference of a cult and a Maamar? It's exactly the same thing. He has blind faith, the Jew has blind faith. Exactly the same thing. What's the difference? He's in a cult, he's in a cult. The difference is in a cult, they're afraid of questions. They will not allow you to sit with somebody who has questions. Why? Because he's going to put sveikus into you. Exactly.
Still says that you're not allowed to argue
Dama Shatoshev. On the other hand, the Mishnah says Dama Shatoshev. Lapikoides, no? You have to know what to answer. And what if the apikoides is inside? And what if the apikoides is inside of you? By saying you're not allowed to speak to an apikoides, what do you do? I'm asking you. What if the question is inside of you, not inside of him? That's the matzav today.
Building a deeper home for the...
If you don't learn how to talk to that part of you, what happens? You become you are. You just block it. So what do you help? You helped somebody? You didn't help anybody.
Why do people have the need to...
Huh? The what? If the because is outside, he's inside. What do you...
I remember my Rabbi said that the Kreuzliga, the Jews who didn't ask questions, they went to the fire. Everybody who tried to...
Rabbi Yosef Yaivitz writes this, that the Jews in Spain, a lot of them converted to Christianity. Some say half of the Jews of Spain. In Germany and France, they went on Mesiras Nefesh. So they wrote, because in Spain they were all into philosophy. In Germany, the Ashkenazim were not into philosophy. The Sephardic Jews in Spain were very into philosophy. That's a whole other Indian. In other words, what happened was, their seichel was mailam on their emunah. By the Ashkenazim, their seichel was a mailam on their emunah. That's what happened.
They were saying we only use the seichel to come to them.
Fakert. Emunah is beyond seichel. What happened is they got caught up in the whole world of philosophy. They got caught.
How could they get caught up in the truth?
Levusha? What levusha? You think a Jew who wears a suit and a Jew who wears a kapot is different levels of emunah? That's what they taught you. I don't know what that means. A lavush may be a beautiful thing. Was hat das mit der Munna?
Because if you don't follow Masoides Overstein, you don't believe. That's what it's saying.
They don't understand what a munna is. A munna is not an Indian of a munna is not something you do or you don't do. A yid has a munna. Every Jew has a munna. This is the yisoid of the whole Torah of Baal Shem Tov. Somebody who doesn't understand this, the whole yisoid of the Baal Shem Tov is missing. It's not the yisoid of Yiddishkeit. Baal Shem Tov explained it. Every Jew has a munna.
Is there anything to it?
The Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos Tzadik Zayin, Moshe said, "Vehein lo ya'aminu li." So Hashem told him, "Yidna ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim." A Gemara in Shabbos, it's not a Chassidish sefer. Ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. Huh?
Is there anything to the Levish at all?
Which Levish?
The Chetzoin is the Levish.
Yeah, it's a nice thing, but what's up to with a munna?
Just the uniform?
What?
Just a nice thing.
Just ask that.
Which Levush?
Rabbi, can we all show up tomorrow in t-shirts and shorts?
Hallo, will wissen, warum ist Bachsinen gegangen mit Levish? Die Babetsche Rebbe sind auch alle gegangen mit Levish, ja? Gibt's den letzten Rebbe?
To separate yourself from the secular world.
Alle Babetsche sind auch gegangen mit Levish. Will wissen, wo ist der Makor Levish? Das ist nicht Kaschmiss in einem Minute.
Okay, darf reden.
Kaschmiss versichert.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.